Busts by veteran NFL model that nailed Jaylen Waddle's rough season, 2024. The Atlanta Falcons and New Orleans Saints are tied for the easiest strength of schedule in the 2024 NFL season based on last year's records. Should that factor into your 2024 fantasy football strategy? The Falcons have a new head coach and new quarterback this season, so what should fantasy football players expect from Atlanta options such as Bijan Robinson, Drake London and Kyle Pitts in 2024 fantasy football rankings? Kirk Cousins takes over in Atlanta after a season-ending Achilles injury in Minnesota last year. Don't miss any update. Subscribe my YouTube channel for entertainment news. The Saints have a similar group of offensive playmakers, featuring Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. New Orleans ranked 13th in yards last season, but with an easier schedule, can you expect better performances from their offensive weapons for 2024 fantasy football lineups? As you finalize your 2024 fantasy football draft prep, be sure to check out the 2024 fantasy football cheat sheets from the proven computer model at Sportsline. Last year, the model accurately predicted that Dolphins wide receiver Jaylen Waddle would fail to live up to his fantasy football ADP. Waddle's 2023 fantasy football ADP was 34.86 overall and he was the 11th receiver off the board on average. He'd go on to notch a 1,000-yard season but only had 72 receptions with 4 touchdowns and he'd finish as the number 34 fantasy football wide receiver in CBS Sports PPR leagues. The same model has a proven track record providing fantasy football tips, identifying A.J. Brown as a sleeper in 2020 and nailing Jonathan Taylor's monstrous season in 2021. Additionally, it's called past fantasy football sleepers like Derrick Henry in 2019, Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara in 2018, and Devontae Adams in 2017. Anybody who banked on players like those made a run at their league title. The model is powered by the same people who generated projections for all 3 major fantasy sites, and it beat human experts last season when there was a big difference in ranking. The 2024 Fantasy Football PPR rankings and 2024 Fantasy Football Standard projections update multiple times daily, so you're always getting the best fantasy football advice. Now, Sportsline has simulated the entire NFL season 10,000 times and released its latest fantasy football rankings 2024, along with plenty of sleepers, breakouts and busts. Head to Sportsline now to see them. Top 2024 Fantasy Football Busts. One of the 2024 fantasy football busts the model is predicting, 49ers tight end George Kittle. The 30-year-old led all tight ends in receiving yards last season, 1,020, as he has the potential to break a huge play anytime the ball is in his hands. However, with the bevy of playmakers in the San Francisco offense, he doesn't receive as many opportunities as some of the other standout tight ends as his 65 receptions ranked 10th among tight ends as he fell to TE5 on the season. Kittle played in each of San Francisco's first 16 games but only had more than 4 receptions in 5 contests. Kittle is one of the best all-around tight ends in the NFL, but that hinders his fantasy football value as the 49ers will use him to block for Christian McCaffrey and set up big plays down the field for wide receivers like Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. Kittle is going in the top 6 tight ends in ADP and he's going more than a full round higher than multiple tight ends the model has ranked higher in its 2024 fantasy football rankings. Another bust that Sportsline's Fantasy Football Rankings 2024 have identified, Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers. The future Hall of Fame quarterback is undoubtedly one of the best QBs in NFL history, but he turns 41 in December and is coming off a torn Achilles that cost him the entire 2023 NFL season. He was the talk of New York and the NFL last season after being traded to the Jets and starring in HBO's Hard Knocks, but his name appeal and how he's being sold as the Jets' savior is sending him off 2024 fantasy football draft boards too high. Rodgers was QB 13 in fantasy football in 2022 in his final year with the Packers and assuming health. When he walks off the field after Week 1, it will be his first completed NFL game in more than 20 months. There's no guarantee Rodgers will still have the ability that made him an elite quarterback throughout his career and the Jets haven't produced a viable fantasy football quarterback in decades. Rodgers is going inside the top 20 QBs in ADP, which is higher than the model projects him entering 2024 fantasy football drafts.